It's been reported this morning that double child murderer Colin Pitchfork is set to be released from prison this week after the parole board rejected an appeal against his release. Pitchfork, who's now 61, raped and strangled to death two 15-year-old girls, Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth, in the 1980s. He was given a life sentence by the courts with a minimum term of 30 years in 1988 after pleading guilty to both murders. Now, Colin Pitchfork is an exceptional case for many reasons, not least because of the sheer inhumanity of his crimes. What's also extraordinary in this case is that after leading Leicestershire police on their biggest ever manhunt at the time, Pitchfork then went on to be the first murderer in Britain to be convicted using DNA evidence. Now, the world has changed a lot in those 30 years. When Colin began his sentence, the World Wide Web hadn't even been invented. The Berlin Wall still stood. And the parole board say Colin Pitchfork has changed too. But I struggle to buy that. What I do know is that the gravity of his crimes has not changed. The fact he raped and murdered somebody's children has not changed. Let's not forget the type of human this man is. He was so troubled, so ashamed and remorseful about his first murder of 15-year-old Linda Mann that 3 years later he did the same thing to Dawn Ashworth. You tell me if those are the crimes of a man with a conscience. If that is a man worthy of breathing the same air as good law-abiding people in this country. Now, the parole board say it is satisfied that Pitchfork is safe to release to the public, that he no longer poses a danger to the public. The Ministry of Defence has said that if he breaches any of his 36 licence conditions, which they say are some of the strictest ever, then he will be right back in prison. Some of the restrictions he faces include wearing an electronic tag, being placed on the sex offenders register, being banned from going near relatives of his victims, and apparently restrictions on using the internet. But this isn't good enough. I don't want to live in a society where child rapists and murderers ever get the chance to roam the streets again. If Colin Pitchfork lives to life expectancy age, he could very well have 2 decades of life left. That's 2 decades of a man who is willing to rape and murder children, walking and living amongst people and their families. Look, I think we're one of the most compassionate countries on the planet, and long may it continue. But when it comes to people who hurt children, sometimes I wish the people in charge of our justice system wouldn't show so much compassion for child rapists and murderers.